Welcome back to the 21 Convention 2019 of Orlando, Florida. Our next speaker is an alumni speaker of the 21 Convention, returning for his fourth time to our stage. He's also the best-selling and legendary author of The Way of Men, Becoming a Barbarian and a More Complete Beast. Without further ado, please help me welcome Jack Donovan to the stage. Welcome back.
All right, man. Cool. Yes, sir. Thank you. So, manly idealism. Why are most of you here today? You're here because you want to be better men, a better version of yourselves. You have an idea of yourself, a platonic form of man that you want to be more like. You want to improve. You want to create yourself. But how do you do that? Who creates men? When I announced that I was going to speak at this conference, I got a comment from a guy, and it was something along the lines of, all these guys should just save their money. They don't need to go to listen to see all these so-called men. If you want to know what being a man is, you should just get a woman pregnant, and then you'll figure it out. And so, I went back and I looked at his profile and I looked at his woman, and I wasn't impressed. But it's worth addressing. It's a statement that I think if you write about masculinity and you talk about it, and whether you talk about it to your friends or whether you're me up here on the stage talking about it, it's something that maybe you'll hear a lot. And I've certainly heard it a lot over the years. It's an idea that you need a woman to make you a man. Now, it is true on a technical level that you do need a woman to make you a father. I can't really deny that. But fatherhood and masculinity are not exactly the same thing. There's a lot of overlap, and I think a good father is, being a good father is an expression of being a strong man. But I was a delivery guy in Portland for years, and I can tell you I've delivered ellipticals and treadmills to a lot of really effeminate men who happen to have children. And on the same, the other side of the spectrum, the trailer parks and ghettos are full of slobs. Terrible excuses for human beings, let alone men, who have at some point managed to get a woman pregnant. So logically speaking, it doesn't carry that making, a woman makes you a man by becoming pregnant. And, at the top of the spectrum, I've met a lot of guys who have seen combat and tier 1 operators and men who have fought in the UFC. And a lot of them don't have children. And you can call them, you can say, hey, you're not a man to those guys, but I'm just going to stand back and watch. I don't think that's going to fly. So something's not the same there. And when I say this, people think that maybe I'm anti-fatherhood or something like that, and actually that's not the case at all. In fact, I'd love to see it done right. At my jiu-jitsu gym that I work out at, there's this guy. He brings his son along with him. His son's maybe 10, 12 years old, and he brings him to jiu-jitsu class, and the guy works with some of the smaller adults, and then at the end of class, he rolls with his son. And I've told him, I'm like, man, you're doing something right. That's a good thing. That kid is going to remember for the rest of his life that, A, his dad gave a shit, and his dad wanted to try and make him see some component, whatever was in his power to help him become a better man. And that's great. So I'm definitely pro-fatherhood, but a woman can't make you a man. And that's one of the themes I'm going to talk about today. And who creates men? Well, men create men. In The Way of Men, I talked about the perimeter. And basically, it's a really simple concept that comes from evolutionary psychology That is, if you're out in a forest, I love a campfire as a symbol of it because you can really see where the perimeter ends, where this fades into darkness. So men are walking through nature. And nature by itself, to us, is chaotic. It has its own order, but it doesn't care about us. And so there's this chaos and darkness. There's bears out there. There's other men hiding there to kill you. And your job as a man is to control that space, to make that space safe. Because everything around that fire is everyone that you care about. Your friends, your kids, your women. Everything that matters is right there. So your job as a man is to work with other men to help keep that perimeter safe, to help order that space. Because there's chaos out there, but you're creating order inside here so that human life can survive. And, women may help with that, they may not, but women have a different value to men. A woman doesn't have to really do anything if she's hot, because she has a value to men that has nothing to do with her ability to hunt, fight, or do anything else. But men, I think that this is why we care about being men so much, is because we've always had to function in that group of men on that perimeter. That's been our job, and if you can't do that, well, what good are you? So, and briefly, in that book, I talk about something called tactical virtues, and those are the qualities that I think that men needed from each other, and they're still how we judge men today. If you say if that guy is more masculine than that guy, you're judging him according to these tactical virtues. Is he, strength, courage, mastery, and honor. Is he strong? That's pretty self-evident. That's one of the basic characteristics of masculinity. Is he courage? Is he going to be able to take risks when you need him to take risks? If he's fighting, boars are scary, let alone an aurochs, if you have to take that down to bring food back into the protected space. He's going to fight other men to save your women from being raped from the other tribe. Mastery, obviously he has to be competent in doing the job, all the skills that are necessary to do that job. And honor, the most basic definition of honor is that you care about what your honor group, your group of men, thinks of you. That's your reputation and you need honor in that group because that's how men trust each other. Like, is he going to go off and do something, cowardly and make us all look bad, maybe get one of us killed? And, honor is oftentimes makes you do something that you don't want to do, but the other guys are depending on you. And it's been really it's been great for me over the years. I wrote this all, and it was all theory to me, but I've done some firearms training and so forth with different guys who have actually seen combat and worked in units and been under stress, and they're like, I've seen them teaching the class. They're not even trying to do this, but they're saying these exact things in different words. If you're with this guy and everybody here is depending on you, you have to have your shit together. You have to have the skills necessary because you can't fuck up. Because if you fuck up, one of us dies. And they all say this, and so it's been really cool to hear that said back to me over the years. But I'm going to go back to this kind of primal space, this chaotic space. And, we go into nature, and as I said, we create order. That's one of the fundamental things that men do, is, nature, you take down these trees. You might, make some shelters, cut some wood for fire. You see what plants you can use, harvest some of the animals. Take that space and make it useful for you. And if you fly over the world, as many of you have today, or within the past week, over 30,000 feet, you see how man has ordered his world. All these little geometric shapes of this is where we're going to have corn, and this is where we're going to have wheat, and this is where we're going to have an airport, and this is where we're going to have a public park. Men create order in their world. And we do that as well with language. Imagine giving someone directions. You're going on a hunt with your primal buddies, and you have to give them directions. But without language, your directions are, And so we have to create, mountain, tree, river, concepts that help us make our space more useful. And then it becomes a question of bigger concepts. And when we apply this skill of creating order, we also do it to our own minds. Because that's chaos too. We have all these hormones that give us thoughts and feelings and emotions, and we use words to describe them, to make sense of them, to put our consciousness in order. And that's really what myth and philosophy and religion and psychology, that's really what they all are. Is stories, a way to make sense of this chaos in here, to describe the world around us in a way that makes sense, in a way that's useful. So, and I think throughout time you see the stories change, right? One religion comes, another one goes. Sometimes it's because the king converts, sometimes it's because a variety of reasons. Maybe that story was no longer useful. It wasn't the best story at the time. And you can see, obviously, there are certain stories, I'm not going to get into it, but there's certain stories in the world that you hear in the media and so forth, and there's an agenda behind them. We want this to be the story that you use to order your consciousness. We want you to perceive the world in this particular way. So this is my favorite Carl Jung meme. As I said, psychology, it's all stories, and I've always been really into the arts and really into symbolism and the depth of meaning of things. And so, I always thought Jung was my guy, and he has been. I mean, if you're talking about archetypes, thanks Jung. He definitely has influenced things in a really positive way, and certainly me and my thinking over my lifetime. But there was a more scientific, rational approach to psychology, and Jung's like, how about magic, though? How about magic? And he looked all through myth the myths of societies and was pulling all these symbols that have always been important to people and making connections between them. And again, that's what I like to do. So I thought he was going to be my guy. So this summer, I bought the Red Book, and the Red Book is a book that Jung wrote. I think it was before World War I. It was while he was going through a difficult time in his life. But it's a fantastic piece of art, really. It's all written in calligraphy, and there's a bunch of artwork in it, and he did it all by hand and himself over a period of many years. But he wrote this first book kind of in a very stressful period, and he thought he was going crazy. And so he forced himself to imagine all these different visions. And then he's like trying to examine, why am I envisioning that? And then I see a lot of these visions getting applied to his psychology later. And you can see it in his notes and so forth. But, so, I bought this book, and it's an expensive book. It's like $170. And I bought a stand for it. And I bought the Kindle version, and I'm like, I'm going to take a month, and I'm just going to read this book, and this is going to be a really powerful spiritual experience for me, and I'm going to read it out loud every day, and I'm going to really get into it and get something huge out of it. And I did, because I hated it. And not to say that it's bad. You can look, through the Red Book, and I could quote thoughtful and true statements from the Red Book on Instagram for the next 6 months. It's great stuff, but there are two concepts in it that bugged me. And Jung's been so influential. I'm like, how much of these concepts, A, is he understanding something that's been going through Western society for a long time, and B, in presenting them and filtering them out through his work, how much influence has he had in that's maybe negative? And so those two concepts are the feminine soul and the murder of the hero. So the feminine soul, that was the first thing that triggered me. I'm reading through this, and Jung talks about, he's talking to the spirit of the depths, which is, this eternal voice and eternal sense of truth. And then, he said, and then my soul reaches out to me, and she said, am I she? I'm like, really? I'm like, why do you think your soul is a woman? And so that bugged me, and I kind of put a bookmark in it, and I looked it up, and I listened to some speeches about the Red Book and so forth, and then one of his major scholars pointed out where he found it. And one of the things that in his collected works, Jung noted, he connected it to Dante and the medieval mind. And he thinks that's where it switched. And so here are some quotes from his collected works. The medieval background of Faust has a quite special significance because there actually was a medieval element that presided over the birth of modern individualism. It began, it seems to me, with the worship of women, which strengthened the man's soul very considerably as a psychological factor, since the worship of woman meant the worship of the soul. This is nowhere more beautifully and perfectly expressed than in Dante's Divine Comedy. Dante is the spiritual knight of his lady, and for her sake, he embarks on the adventure of the lower and upper worlds. In this heroic endeavor, her image is exalted into the heavenly, mystical figure of the Mother of God, a figure that has detached itself from the object and become the personification of a purely psychological factor, or rather, of those unconscious contents whose personification I've termed the anima. So, I did a little bit of research on this, looked into the background of this, and I read Divine Comedy, or parts of it, many years ago. And Dante is kind of an interesting figure, and what he did was this girl named Beatrice. He only met her a few times in his life. And the way he writes about her, because he wrote a whole book of poetry about her, La Vita Nuova, and he writes about it like she is the queen of virtue, and just seeing her has made me be cleansed of all vice. And just seeing this woman has made me good. And this was not even a woman that he had a romantic relationship with. This was just some chick that he met on the street a few times. I had to look it up because the way he wrote about her, I'm like, is this guy an incel? And it turns out he's not. He was betrothed and he got married and he had a few kids, but he never wrote about his wife. He just wrote about this chick that he saw a few times. And, I listened to Sean Smith's speech about letting the wrong women into your life. And he talked about idealization somewhere in this. And this is the perfect idea of insane idealization. He's taken this woman who's probably an average girl and made her into basically the mother of God, who's going to lead him into a better world and make him really a better man. And you see this played out all through Western culture. You see, it becomes part of, medieval culture and knights, like doing great deeds for the lady and so forth. And then it becomes Victorianized into their version of chivalry, which is kind of ridiculous. And, this idea that a woman is going to make you better. And, I see it in my friends. I see it in men around me. There's a lot of guys out there who idealize that this virgin, this hot mommy is going to come into their lives and fix it. They're going to find this woman, and then they're going to have a reason to stop drinking. Or then they're going to have a reason to work harder. Or then they're going to have a reason to be better. And they're depending on her as this guide into the manly perfection. And obviously, that isn't a woman's job to guide you. She's not your mom. She's not there to tell you, hey, you're not allowed to go out tonight. But men let women do that. And I think it's because of this idea that's been part of Western culture for a long time. But, we've always had, gods and goddesses and muses and women who inspired men. But I think at some point, maybe this, entry of Catholicism and the Virgin Mother and the idealization of the perfect woman, it changed men in a certain way. And I think that, it makes a lot of sense. There's a balance there, because if you're living in a cutthroat world of men, and you're out slaying motherfuckers all goddamn day, I've had a hard day. I've cut off 3 guys' heads. Nice little Beatrice at home. She's all purity and innocence. She doesn't know of this horrible world that I'm in, where I have to do horrible things all the time. You can see how men would idealize women in that way. But really, she's just a woman, and women are not angels, and they're not devils. They're just women. They have their own agenda and their own state of being, and they have their own wants and needs, and sometimes they are devilish, and sometimes they're angelic. But they're not going to make you a better man by themselves. You have to want to be that better man. And I think this is especially a terrible idea today, because we're not slaying motherfuckers. I mean, most of us. We're not out having a hard day with the men all day long, having a rough time, in this cutthroat world. We're living in a world where you are often raised by a single mother, where you're taught in schools by women their entire point of view. You get it filtered through them. And you go out in the workplace and you work with women, and often they're your managers. I don't think that a woman is going to lead men to become better than they are. We already have a huge amount of feminine influences in our lives. So what I'm saying is that maybe that's not a story that works anymore. Maybe that's not the way that we need to order our consciousness, that some woman is going to be the reason for me to be good, or me to be who I want to be. And Jung talks about, I'm not going to go too far into it, but he talks about the idea of the anima and the animus, and this idea that there's a male and female part of us. And it's an interesting way to explain certain phenomena. It's not wrong. You can make it right. It's an interesting concept to talk about. But he was also really interested in the occult and Gnosticism. And, that's, someone asked me about the Baphomet, and I'm like, well, that says male and female combined in one. We're all the same. Everything is one. It's kind of a part of occult lore. And again, I think that's great for wizards, and that's great if you're trying to create the philosopher's stone, and if you're going to be an alchemist and so forth. But I don't think it's a good story for everyday guys. I don't think it's this idea that you have a feminine side and a masculine side competing. So I'm going to give you a better story. You have no feminine side. You are 100% man. Congratulations. When you were born, when you were conceived, you were XY. You were always going to be a man. And I think that this is important to think about, and I think it's more helpful. Because, our idea of what a woman is a caricature. It's a fantasy. And I think that, especially when people talk about sex and gender today, and men who want to be women and so forth, I have been saying for years, probably 12 years, that sex and gender, that's a total life experience. That's not like something, I decided to put on a different outfit today and now I'm a different sex. This is a total life experience. You were born a boy, you interacted with the world in a male body. You interacted with, boys and girls and your parents and the rest of the world as a male. You've had to process information through that filter your entire life. That has shaped your consciousness. And, the same thing with girls, we don't know what it's like to an average girl walk through a room and most of the men want to fuck her. To deal with that process of having to process that information and be a prey object, really. I mean, they have a whole different filter for reality. So we don't understand what women are. And we create a caricature of them, and they create a caricature of us. And Jung probably would have agreed with that, but the way that his ideas get taken out, you can't, law of unintended consequences, you can't always control the way your ideas make it out into the general public. And when I was in Poland, I was out at a mall in Poland. We had just gone shooting, and I'm with this guy who's a reader of mine, and we're going through a store, and he's like, this guy was in the French Foreign Legion. And he's like, we're going through a store, and he's like, well, I kind of like shopping. I guess it's part of my feminine side. And I'm like, man, you're just buying pants. Calm down. Like, you're not being a woman, you're just buying pants. Ask Tanner. We talk about this kind of stuff all the time. You're just buying pants, you're doing something that you need to do. You need good pants. You don't want to look like an idiot. Okay, buy pants. You enjoy not looking like an idiot. Great. Doesn't mean you're a woman. There's no feminine side to that. I think it's more useful to talk about things as being more or less masculine for you. And maybe, do I need to turn up the masculine? A lot of things that you can be explained as, like, this is, my more feminine side, could actually just as easily and probably better be explained as, I wasn't masculine enough. I wasn't good enough at being a man that day. I need to be a better man, and just take that feminine side out of it, because you're never actually going to be a woman or really understand what that is. You can either be good at being a man, or you can be a shitty man. And I think that's a better scale, a better way to look at everything. And I think it's more important also to look at the different aspects of masculinity. And I'm going to probably write about this more in the future. Balance, people wrote like king, warrior, magician, lover. There's a balance there, different aspects of masculinity. And I'd like to see it as, a lot of guys come to me and they have their head in books. They're really smart and they're really good at certain, aspects of very masculine pursuits in a certain way, but maybe they needed a little something from the physical side and they need to balance that out. And that's I think, what a lot of us do when we talk to guys and try and help them out. I was talking to an MMA fighter recently, and we were talking about Jordan Peterson, and I'm not calling him out or anything, but I think that, he's a guy who's been a book guy his entire life, and he talks a lot about masculinity and strong masculinity, but we were basically like, you know what Jordan Peterson needs? It'd be really cool if he did jiu-jitsu. It'd be good for him. I don't care if he does it for me, not for me, but for him. I think he needs to feel that expressed. He needs to feel the concepts he's talking about as they exist in that part of being a man. And so I think that's really interesting, more than masculine and feminine, balancing these two concepts. Talk about different aspects of the masculine, different ways to be a man, and what's out of balance in your life. So in terms of this feminine soul idea, what I'm saying is that you don't need a woman to follow. You need a man to show you how to do it. Not just to I'll follow her and she'll make me better. No, I need a dude who's going to show me how to be better. And in many cases, that's why you guys are here, right? You're coming to see other men who maybe are better at something than you are and see what they do. How does he do it? Because I believe in myself and I can be better. And the second concept I want to talk about from Jung's Red Book that I think you see it played out all through society is the murder of the hero. And this is a great little scene. You can actually see it in the drawing here, that this is Jung's painting of where he murders the hero. And so he's in this mountain pass. And he's out there with his friends, and it's daybreak. And around the corner comes Siegfried, the great Germanic hero. And his name actually goes back to the Segos, the word for victory, and Fritus, which is peace and sanctuary. So it's a very old concept, older than the name Siegfried. He's the Germanic concept of the hero. And this guy comes around the corner, this great hero, and he's glorious, and he's traveling on a chariot of bones. And so what does Jung do? He and his friends shoot him. And I read that, I'm like, what? That's shitty. That's like shitty behavior. Like, I need to kill the hero so I can feel better about myself. That just bugs me immediately. And he asked himself about it. Why should I kill the hero? Why did I want to do that? Why did I dream this? And he said that what he figured out is he wanted to kill his own idea of, force and efficiency. And he also said, and again, I think this is problematic, that he wanted to kill the hero because the hero means imitation. And kind of monkey see, monkey do. Like, as long as you're imitating a hero, you're not really individuated. You're not really becoming yourself. And I think that's bullshit. I think we need heroes, and I don't know, a lot of really cool guys here, but I don't know any of them who doesn't need to model their behavior after someone, who didn't get where they are by saying, hey, I need to be a little bit more like that guy in this aspect. We need that leadership. And we've always done that, and everyone's going to use that picture, I know, through the conference. I was talking to Tanner last night, and I'm like, everyone's going to use this. But because it's this week, they've been doing this for years, but this is the thing this week. And, you look at what men have been doing, a culture of men throughout history, and we've been raising men up. We've been saying, this is the guy. This is a great man. This is what a great man looks like. This is what a great man does. And that's the culture that you get if you have a heroic culture, if you have an idealized masculinity. Like, this is the goal. And if you don't have that, you have this. That's where that leads. I started a revolution and became a president of a great nation. Well, this guy wore a silly outfit. Great. It's just, and the thing about, as I said, you never can become a woman. You can only become a shitty man. And that's what that leads to. So it's not the imitation of women so much as like the dissension of manhood. And killing the hero has been a huge thing in feminism, and that's why they love stuff like that. Because it's part of their goal. Because they realize that men need heroes, and we need to tear that down. So, what feminism, they want to kill the hero. They want to say, you don't have to have this standard. That's most of their message, really. It's okay to cry. That's so confining. This archetype that you're trying to be, because you'll never be as perfect as this guy. And then they try and take the guy and say why he was really a bad person. He isn't worth looking at anyway. But that's really, saying like most of their message is that masculinity is fake and you're trying so hard and it's, it's not making you, you should just relax and be whatever you are. It's like fat acceptance. Just be what you are. Why be better? You're trying, look how this hurts you. It's making you sad that you're not something better. And, they say that, so they take down the hero. But, what do they have to offer? They, in return, just the freedom, and they call it freedom. But it's the freedom to be weak. It's the freedom to be dependent. It's the freedom to cry. Men don't want that. And it doesn't make them better. And the idea that because you have this North Star that you look up to, this ideal of masculinity, then that makes you have a sad life because you'll never reach that. No one reaches that. It's an ideal. That's not the point. The point, I have guys who I think are better than me in certain aspects, and I'm not going to ever be them. But they help, by looking at them and showing what they have done, it helps me be a better version of myself. Every power lifter doesn't have to be the top power lifter, but maybe he gets a lot stronger, and that's better. And the same thing, you can apply it to anything. I don't care if you apply it to, I look at guys who read more books or learn faster than I do. It's like, well, I need to be better at that. I need to be more that guy. I'm never going to be that guy, but I'm going to be better for trying. And be a better version of myself. So one of the most positive qualities of women is empathy. And this is where this comes from, like, oh, you're hurting because you're not a good enough man. And that's kind of the funny thing about feminism. Like, empathy is good, But it's only good in the context of motherhood and in building tribal relationships. You know, it's always the woman who's sending out the thank you cards and the Christmas cards and making sure everybody in the circle feels included and feels tight. And that's what they want. And that's what's really kind of ironic or comical about feminism is that you have all these women, and despite themselves, despite the fact that they say that there is almost no difference between the sexes, despite the fact that they say that, they're so feminine in that way. You know, what they want is, you know, like they want everyone to feel included. They want everyone to feel the same. They're very equalizing. Everyone's the same, no hierarchy, horizontal culture. You know, everyone feels loved and included and special. And again, that's good if it's your mom and you're little and you're crying and you're scared. You're inside the circle, you're in a protected area. But that's what feminism is doing. And despite themselves, despite how vile they can be sometimes, there's a part of them, and it's a driving part of their philosophy that wants to take the whole world and put it right here. It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And that's what, really, that's part of this driving thing. Like they say, you know, this person who's been excluded, their feelings are hurt, so we shouldn't exclude them. You know, you're saying that this quality is good and they don't have that quality, so they feel bad. And so we have to include them and make them feel included and make them feel special. And that's an element of feminism that I think gets overlooked, is how female it is. You know, and so, you know, being in that spot, that's a good spot to be, right? You know, like it's comforting and safe. It's like an opiate. You know, you're all curled up and you feel warm and nothing's going to hurt you. And everybody wants a little bit of that in their life. But that's not where growth happens. And that's not where manhood happens. You know, at some point, you need a father to step in. You need a different figure to step in and challenge you. You know, challenge you to be better than that, because you can't stay curled up in that ball forever. You need someone to step in who is going to challenge you and say, you know, your mom's going to tell you everything is going to be okay, and your dad's job is to tell you that it's your job to make everything okay. Yeah, someday this is going to be your job. And that's the role of the father, is to create order and to take you outside into that perimeter, outside into that space between order and chaos. It's called a threshold space, a liminal space. And that is, in anthropology, where initiation has always happened. That's where transformation into manhood always happens, in that space where you're challenged and a little afraid and you have to overcome that. You know, that's what the role of the father and the hero and the mentor and the leader. That's what the role is. He creates order and then shows you how someday you can create it too. He's an example to follow. So, back to manly idealism. That's why you're here. You know, the culture of women has always been a horizontal culture. It's of the earth. It levels everything, makes it equal. And the culture of men is a vertical culture. We want to look upward. We want to see something higher than ourselves. We want to look up and say, there's the example, there's how I become better. And so that's the culture that I think that we need to create. Is a culture that includes our own pantheons of heroes and is unapologetic about it, because that's the problem. You know, this tearing down of idols that has become so popular in culture, the tearing down of ideals. I mean, that's where you really have to stand your ground. You're like, no, actually, that's fine, because you can't control the world. You know, you really can't. It's going to be what it's going to be, and there are lots of people. Everyone wants to be in that space. Everyone wants to be protected and dependent. You know, so many people do, and the people who don't want to be are going to be a minority. So you have to be unapologetic about it. Like, well, you can live in your safe space, and that's fine, but I'm going to seek out a vertical culture. I'm going to seek out a culture where there is a good, better, and a best. And create my own pantheon of heroes. And that pantheon, it becomes an ideal self, a model for you. And so I would say, let that be your sin. To sin against the ideal version of yourself that exists in this pantheon. And it ever changes because you get new heroes, and if you've gotten really good at something, maybe you need a different hero. So to do that, in order to have a culture of heroes, we need to raise men up. And I think that women are so good at this. I hate the way they do it, but they're so good at this because there are women will get support from not only women, but all the men, obviously, but women will support each other. And they will raise each other up, even if they've done nothing. They will raise women up just because they're women. And we don't want to do that because we want a vertical culture, not a horizontal culture. But, you see online and so forth, in real life, men, because they're different, handle this differently. They handle the idea of heroes differently, and I think that they get kind of jealous. And you see it online all the time, some guy who's pretty advanced at whatever he's doing. You don't care what it is. And there's a bunch of little haters who want to tear him down, and if they want to find something wrong, they watch 3 YouTube videos about whatever he's doing, and now they're experts. And they want to jump in to show you why he's wrong. And when I see those guys, I just see insecurity, and they haven't done anything. It's not impressive. I just see a bunch of guys who are excited about criticizing someone who they really don't deserve to criticize. They haven't really earned that. Criticism is great from peers. But in a vertical culture, all criticism is not equal. So, you see guys who constantly tear each other down. Whereas, women have the ridiculous culture of, I went to the gym today, 10 girls. You're amazing. Okay, you're not amazing. You went to the friggin' gym, But, and they say, they do anything. It's amazing. And, I said something mean to someone. You're a badass. No. You're not any of those things, and it's ridiculous. And so I think in many ways, men react to that culture and we're like, well, we're not going to be that. We're not going to do that. And so a reaction to that is that a lot of men will just do the opposite and they'll refuse to acknowledge other men at all. Like if another man is doing well, they'll be like, that's good. All right, but they won't say anything. They'll just watch. And, that's not really helpful. And again, it seems a little insecure. It seems a little jealous, but I think that what they want to avoid is becoming the third guy, and that's prostration. And I'm not going to use the word worship because worship actually means to honor, the etymology of it. But prostration means to get down on, oh God, you're amazing, and the upturned hand of the monkey. And wow, that is embarrassing to watch. And you see that online all the time too, and I've had it happen to me, and I don't want that. You see guys who are like, again, do the amazing thing. They blow you up into some version that you could never be. It's beyond idealization. It's, you do one little thing and they're like, I bet you could beat up anybody. Well, I'm pretty sure I couldn't. But okay, or they do really anything. A good lift, like, you're so strong, I could never be that strong. And they put themselves down. And as you get to be, you can kind of see that I've worked out a little bit. And, I've had dudes walk up to me in produce department of a store, and I'm just, in the morning, I'm like asleep, and I'm not trying to look scary. And after the produce guy walked by me and be like, I wouldn't mess with you. And I'm like, that's not necessary. You don't need to do that. You don't need to make yourself look bad, man. To acknowledge somebody, you don't have to do that. It's embarrassing. Like, why, man, you don't have to do that. You are who you are, and I'm comfortable with who I am, and so no one wants to be that guy. So don't be that guy. If you're that guy, stop doing that. That's not helpful because it makes other men not want to give each other compliments. And so I think the focus of what you have to do to build a culture that is, more focused on manly idealism and vertical culture is that you have to, be able to honor men with dignity. And I found as I get more confident with myself over life and what my contribution has been and what I've done, man, it is so easy to give a simple, honest compliment. I can say, good lift. That was inspiring. That was good. Good job. That doesn't hurt me. That doesn't make me seem lower. That's not submissive. It's just but it is inspiring other men. It is encouraging them to continue without being ridiculous. And I think that's the culture that we need. Is honor men, but keep your dignity while you're doing it. So I'm going to wrap up a little bit. We talked about all these ideas of order and creating order. And so I'm going to focus a little bit on a symbol that has been helpful to me in that area. And because I'm the guy who likes symbols and magic and so forth. And if you take all the Indo-European languages, which is probably the languages that anyone in this room is speaking, has ever spoken, from Indian to German, French, all that. If you trace all that back and trace all their mythology and all their culture back, you come to this. They've theorized what their god was. The Proto-Indo-Europeans that lived like 500,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, and it created the languages that all of our languages come from, and a lot of the culture and the ideas. They've kind of theorized their own mythology. Here's what we think they believed based on all these ideas. Because Dios Father is the name of the guy, and it means father of the daylight sky. And you can see that. Sky Father is pretty much almost a universal concept for God. It's kind of the original patriarch. And you see the name reflected. You can see these words. They become other words later. Dios becomes Dios. It becomes another word for God. It becomes also Tiwash and Tir. And all these other gods who've meant order and daylight and all the things that I've been talking about. And Father, obviously, that it becomes Vater and Pater and all the different versions of Father. And so Dios Father, Father of the daylit sky, you can imagine how if you wanted to look up to something, what's better to look up to than the sun? What would the ultimate image of a father be? It'd be light. What does the sun do? What does light do? It illuminates the world. It illuminates the world so that you can order the world. Because at night, there's darkness and mystery and chaos. It lights up the world. It makes truth possible. It's a giver of life, obviously the life-giving sun. We need the sun to survive. It's warm and inspiring. It's constant and dependable. And you can stare at the sun, but it's going to do what it's going to do, and it'll burn your eyes long enough. Like the idea of the mother who kind of does whatever you want to versus the stern father who's just going to keep going. And a lot of people have related what I'm talking to with this concept to Stoicism. Because it's going to do what it's going to do, and it's sure of itself, and it knows what it is. And that's, as you get older, or maybe even as you're younger, and you talk about who you want to be in the lives of the people around you. Who do I want to be in my circle? Well, the warm, inspiring center of gravity. Not the person who's always complaining, not the person who always has a problem. I want to be this person who lights up the room and makes order possible. There's order around me, if nowhere else. That's a goal. That's an ideal. And I think it's a one that it crosses culture, and culture that crosses boundaries. You know, the sun, all the mythology of the sun is that, you know, it goes through the sky all day long, and then it disappears into darkness. And it's usually portrayed as a harrowing. You know, it goes through darkness and it has to endure darkness, but you can depend on it coming up the next day. You know, and that's, you know, again, a father figure has to be dependable and always a source of order and light. And so, you know, this has become an important symbol for me. And I think it's an inspiring thing that you can take with you. So, this idealized father, this son. So, when you leave this place and you go out into the world and you're surrounded by darkness and chaos and disorder, you can choose to get angry and stay angry. You can choose to feed into it. You can choose to disappear into it and become part of it. Or you can choose to be a source of light and life. A source of warmth. A center of gravity. A source of order. An unmoved mover, a constant. You can choose to be the kind of man that's worth looking up to. You can choose to be the sun. So I'm going to leave you with a motto that's become important to me, and maybe it'll become important to you. When you're moving through darkness, remember who you are. Remember what you are. You're the man. Be the man. Be the light. And whatever happens, stay solar. Thank you.
We got time for a few quick questions if you guys want to go up to the mic in the center of the room. If not, we can wrap up. Oh, come on, you pussies. I know you guys got questions. Elliot, going? All right.
Great speech.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much. Love your books.
Thank you.
What was the term you just used? Prostrate?
Yeah. You don't have to do that, man.
Thank you.
Thank
Your talk challenged me.
Awesome.
Yeah, there was some challenging stuff in there. One of my greatest mentors told me that to be fully man, you have to become woman to understand, to be integrated, to be full.
Okay.
He was wrong. I took his advice, I looked up to him, and that turned into chaos. So I just want to acknowledge that what you said there was something that challenged me because I had a completely different thought about it until I experienced it, understood the sense of it, and realized that we don't want to step into that darkness. We don't want to step into that chaos. She may be in there, but don't talk to her. And I know you love mythology.
Yep.
In The Fisher King, as it's recounted by Robert Johnson in the book He talks about how Parsifal, the young boy, goes, he leaves his mother, he leaves home, he follows the warriors, and one of the warrior mentors that he comes across says to him, never allow yourself to be seduced by the fair maiden. And in essence, that means don't allow your emotional side, that feminine side, the soft side, the baby boy, beta blue pill boy, side on the inside to ever get a hold of your consciousness. Don't play with her or him on the inside there. So thank you for verbalizing that.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, guys, let's get, we got another question. There you go. And we got this one here, too.
Cool.
Cool. After that, we'll wrap up.
I just want to say thanks for your comments and your speech on this. It's getting me to think about my own relationship with my father, which is kind of contentious and long dead, actually. So it's helping me to sort of organize my thoughts on that. I just want to thank you for that.
Cool. Awesome.
So you spoke a lot about heroes. Is there any type of particular heroes that you have in mind, like to kind of look up to? Because you talked about, and just kind of like as like models, like you mentioned Carl Jung and Jordan Peterson, and how to like decorate your, I think you said Parthenon or something.
Right. Yeah.
With like these heroes, like who do you have in mind for that?
I think that is somewhat individual. I'm not going to make everybody's hero the same. Because you need, a good friend of mine at one point said, he used to say, you know, like your friends around you, you pull things from them when you need them. And you carry all the people around you, all the men that have inspired you around you, you carry them with you in some way. And, you know, because it doesn't have to be someone famous. You know, I've met a lot of personal heroes and, you know, they let you down sometimes. They aren't who you want them to be. But who can be the idea that you have of them? You know, who can be that guy? But you try. If you're doing a good job, you try, but you can't be that guy. So it doesn't have to be someone famous, and I think that's important. And that's, you know, where a father figure in your life isn't necessarily famous. It could be someone who's close to you, who's like, that guy is really good at this one thing that I want to get better at. So I'm going to start, what does he do? And why is he better at that? And get better at that thing. You know, because we all need different things. You know, some of us are really good at one thing, but we need to get good at a different thing. So, like I said, maybe your pantheon changes over time. I mean, there are some ideals, certainly, you know, that are all the same, but I think that you have to find the people around you that you want to model like. Who do you want to be more like? You know, that's what's important.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have. Give it up one more time for Jack Donovan.